Yeah, and getting clear on what vision you want to cast for your life. So they say without vision, the people will cast off their restraint. And a lot of times it's hard to be content with the discipline and the grind if it's not clear to what ends is this happening.
Welcome to another episode of Aleph Ventures TV. My name is Haakon. I am the director of development over here at Aleph, and today I'm joined by Mr. Jason Paris. Jason, how we doing, man?
It's a great day to have a great day.
Good. Always with you. Well, it's good to have you. Thank you for taking the time to have a chat. What I wanted to talk to you about and have you on for was to talk about personal discipline. So something that when I'm fortunate enough to talk to a lot of business owners and we talk about their business. And one of the things that is really a theme is there's a strategy component to running a painting business. There's certain strategies that you have to do, but a lot of it, if we're being honest, comes down to our personal behavior. Like what type of habits and behavior and ultimately discipline do we have around those strategies? And when when I think of discipline, I think of Jason Paris oftentimes. So maybe just a little context, and then I want you to introduce yourself for anybody who doesn't know you. But Jason, I've been fortunate enough we do quite a bit of life together. We live pretty close to each other. So we work together, but then we have a lot of overlap in life together as well with some of our families and whatnot. So I get to observe a lot of your life, and you are a very consistent human being. And like I said, when I think of discipline, I think of you. So I think that would be an awesome thing to talk to you about. But like I said, maybe introduce yourself. Tell everybody a little bit about you if they haven't come across you before.
Sure. High level, most people know me from Paris Painting. So Paris Painting is a house painting company located in the Twin Cities. Last year we did just over 8 figures. We've added on a little roofing division. I'm also a founder of Aleph Holdings. So Aleph Holdings has 15 companies in it. It's trending for a $50 million top line. Additionally, with my partners, we started Aleph Capital. It's where we make investments into real estate, mostly multifamily housing, from the development to the build to the hold. I have 5 beautiful kids, been married for just over 11 years. I like running long distances. So I'm an ultra marathon type of a guy. And then recently picked up the hobby of aviation. So working on getting my private pilot's license.
Awesome, man. So to kick this off, I'd be curious, would you say that you have always been a disciplined person?
I don't know how to gauge that as a child. So I don't know if discipline really existed as a kid or whatnot. I think in my early 20s, I had the good fortune to get very intentional. And I think that intentionality makes it easier to drive discipline. So I think as a formative young adult, that was something that I was just fortunate with.
Tell me a little bit, like what drove that intentionality? Like how did you get intentional at that formative time?
Yeah, and getting clear on what vision you want to cast for your life. So they say without vision, the people will cast off their restraint. And a lot of times it's hard to be content with the discipline and the grind if it's not clear to what ends is this happening. And that's the challenge of being disciplined to goals as opposed to being disciplined to a future intention or future state. Goals are there as waypoints. They're not ultimately what we're trying to attain. It's more what the goals lead to what ends is the ultimate motivator.
Yeah. I recently came across a quote of the Stoics. It had a saying that if you don't know where you're headed, if you don't know where you're sailing, then no wind is favorable. And so I thought that was pretty good. But just that idea of, if you don't know where you're going, to a degree, discipline doesn't matter, or that kind of undergirds discipline.
It's called the
is some
midlife
of what you're
crisis.
saying.
Yeah, it's called the midlife crisis. Most people run into that. Or another classic example is, you're in your early 20s, you start tracking out the goals of your life, and it's, hey, I want to be super fit, hot wife, and drive a Lamborghini. And then push comes to shove, and maybe you don't want to do those things. You're like, oh shoot, maybe it's not actually what I want in life. It's just what I thought sounded good. And until you get really clear on what you're committed to, that's going to play out sideways one way or another.
So bring me into, as a young adult, you are able to get more intentional. That's formative. And then a little bit later, you find yourself married, starting to have kids, and getting into a painting business. And I think folks that might come across this are going to be at different stages of life, maybe in terms of just starting a business, maybe in this year, in 2024, to maybe their business is really mature and stable. And I think there's disciplines at different stages, which I think you maybe uniquely have experienced a wide range of stages of a business in a compressed amount of time. But let's bring it to, the early days of starting Paris Painting. What would you say like personal discipline looked like for you in those years?
Yeah, I think very clear focus and a willingness to sacrifice. So saying no to a lot of things because you have a very clear yes and a why for that yes. And just that manic focus. Right. And then with that comes tenacity and grit and an irrational belief. Having that intention of what you want things to look like is important, because that's what the goals ultimately go towards. I'd say another component of discipline is you're fueled by your passions. So a lot of times, the fuel isn't always, I want to get to this future state. It's the passion that's driving you, behind you.
Tell me about, you said sacrifice, like focus and sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And there was a little, what was the phrase? I remember that you had a phrase.
So I've said this probably maybe even tens of thousands of times. It was my mantra, which was focus, determination, focus, determination, focus, determination, sacrifice. And I would just repeat that to myself over and over and over, because I was weird.
Well, I think sacrifice is an interesting thing of, that is oftentimes, counting the cost is something that people don't always do.
Yep.
Right. You gave the example of somebody who has this lofty, I want this type of spouse. I want this type of, car or
numbers. And
yeah. So they think of that, but like they don't necessarily do the same visualizing or calculating of the sacrifice. I'd be curious, like, what do you feel like? Maybe we could speak to the results that your business has had, but maybe like speak to what do you feel like you sacrificed along the way? Like, what did you pay for? Like, how did you pay for the results that you got? Because I think that's really at the crux of what discipline really gets to.
Well, I think, especially when we talk about businesses, they're pretty unique when you look at your different life areas. When you're focusing on them, you're really, for me, I was really serving the business. And that was to build the business to a stage where it become an asset and serve me in my life. And, every area of life becomes a sacrifice, whether it's fitness, mental well-being, spiritual serenity, time with your spouse, time with your kids, work around the house, social life, volunteer work. Like all those things, in my experience, ended up getting a sacrifice to focus for a very short period of time, relatively speaking, on building a business into an asset, so that you do today what others won't, so tomorrow you can do what others can't. So now that asset is able to serve all those different spheres of your life.
To what degree, whenever, like I would love to, of like the experience of like a Thursday afternoon or something, Because I think there's an element of, you read a book on discipline, you go to a conference, there's these kind of these moments where you get kind of a high of like, yes, I want to grind, I want to have a clear goal, etc.
Mhm.
But then the reality is it's just a bunch of days of like showing up again, like what discipline really is.
Mm.
How aware were you, like how did you maintain that clarity whenever you had the moments where it was like really hard to stay focused or stay determined or whatnot?
Just an irrational passion is probably one way to phrase it.
What do
Right.
you mean by that?
I think any rational person probably would have quit or done something more productive with their life too. Like that's always so. I don't have all the answers. This is a case study in some ways, but I remember there's very two clear examples that pop in my head when you say those words. One is it's pitch dark in the middle of the summer, so it's like 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm driving to the office, and I'm like, nobody appreciates that I'm coming here early. My crews are pissed. My clients are pissed. My bank account is pissed. My wife is pissed. If I would just work at Target, at least someone would say, wow, this person's putting in a lot of hours. That's pretty awesome. Right. So that's one example when no one is giving you pats on the back, but you're just so convicted this is what you should be doing with your life. The other is when you almost feel, I think there's another way to phrase it than that, passion to go the extra mile when you don't have to. So an example, I'm not saying this is healthy, but an example would be it's Saturday night, right? So I've worked 5 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday. Saturday, work 5 to 7. Kids wake up at 7. Kids start taking a nap around noon, work noon to 2. Kids go to bed at 7. I now have the choice because business is going, okay, we'll survive, right? I'll pay my bills. But I have the choice of working 8 till I get dizzy is what would happen. The alternate is that I stay home on Saturday night and I get to watch Netflix in bed with my wife. And there's good balance you should have in your life and all those things. But I just remember those moments of, I don't have to do this, but if I do it, it feels like a very special opportunity that I've been granted, and I want to seize it. And so those late night drives of, it's 8 o'clock, it's Saturday. It would usually end up being till like 2, 3 in the morning when I get too dizzy to walk from my computer to the metal wall of tiles that I had. And it was not required, but I felt like it was a special moment of an opportunity that if I could seize it, something special would happen. And I think there are some people that just are irrational and manic and passionate, and most people should not do that. And now I'm spending now these years I'm trying to find the balance, and I'm recovering from those sacrifices that I made.
So looking back, do you feel like there is anywhere where some of that discipline was like misplaced, or like maybe you didn't need to sacrifice what you sacrificed? Or because sometimes you hear of different stories, and some of them I think very frequently success stories are like yours, where it is somebody had this passion, this clear focus, and they were willing to and did sacrifice to get there. And then there are some folks that it doesn't look quite like that. And I don't know, I'm just curious for you looking back, like, do you feel like you would have been disciplined in different ways at all?
Yeah. Nothing comes to mind immediately. Now, was all that grind necessary? I would argue not, right? But I also don't think I would have been in a position to reap the rewards of future situations if I didn't put in that hard work. So it's hard to say.
Sure. Yeah.
It probably would have been better if I ate healthier or slept more or went for walks in nature, right? There's so many things that just personally I was sacrificing in those grind years. But who knows?
Yeah. So I'd be curious your thoughts on discipline looks different as life circumstances change and seasons of life change. So I'd be curious of, there's the startup phase, like the real startup phase.
Mhm.
And then, for a lot of folks, they're trying to grow their business, stabilize their business. And so discipline changes as that happens. So I'd be curious for you, maybe the next phase of your business growing, getting to a next phase. And I don't know how
Yeah,
you would mark that with revenue or a certain size
sure.
or whatever, but what was your experience in terms of like just your discipline as a business owner needing to shift and change with the
Yeah.
maturing of your business?
Yeah. The classic one is that the business becomes less an extension of yourself and your efforts. And how much can you start to empower other people to leverage an organizational skill or an organization? And a lot of that discipline is letting yourself get out of the way.
Hmm.
So as much as you want to hop back in. So a classic example might be, get a repeat client or a hot lead that comes through the office, and maybe I should go do that bid because it's the big house near the lake. But instead I say, you know what, be disciplined. I'm going to send Haakon Hansen out there because he's our new estimator. And I know where I want to get to. I want to get to an organization where I don't have to do all the bids. Maybe we get to a point where I don't have to do any bids someday. I was thinking in the future. And that starts with the discipline of removing myself from taking the easy route of the business. Right? We're probably going to sell more jobs. They're going to be more profitable if I go do all the bids. But the organizations aren't going to get to where we want to get to unless I start to empower others to do that.
Hmm.
There's a discipline in that.
Yeah. Flesh that out more. Like what makes that so hard?
Well, it's the easy route is I just do it. Right. So it's kind of like when you're in the startup grind, the easy work is I'm just going to work less and achieve less. The hard work is I'm going to do extra work and do more and more and more. And so the next level is I could do a lot and we'd have a lot of success. I could go through the pain of organizational trauma by empowering a team of people that will eventually outclip my personal capacity. So that's hard. And I'd say it's a good question of like, what is discipline? Discipline is doing what you don't want to do when you need to. And, there's there's no part of me that wants to not go do that, awesome bid. But I do know in the long run, it's what's best to achieve my intention.
Sure. How about what would you say if somebody, or maybe without naming any names, but you talk to a lot of other human beings
Mm-hmm.
and I know you enjoy getting into, life planning and digging into people's lives. Like I know you enjoy that. As you do that, we've done that, but you and I at times, like what do you think is pitfalls that you see that keep people from being disciplined? Or I
Yeah.
don't know, is there something that you commonly see? And maybe if it's, you talk to a lot of painting company owners as well, like if there's
Mm-hmm.
certain things, apply that to painting, if you will, but just, I don't know, trends that you think are common pitfalls for not living a disciplined life.
Yeah. I think it starts with doing the hard work of what vision you want to cast for your life. Without a clear vision, people will cast off their restraints. Why would you be disciplined unless it's very clear where you're going?
Hmm.
And there's a lot of assumed visions that people will place on themselves that they're not actually committed to. Right. So be like, well, society tells me that this is successful. So I assume that's the vision that I want for my life. Well, have you really thought through that? Is that actually what you want? Is it just because you saw it on a commercial? Or do you feel that deeply in your bones? Because if you haven't done the hard work, and you're not actually committed to that, you don't really want that. That's going to flush out.
Hmm.
You're gonna observe that in yourself through lack of goals. Another big thing would be humans are just really bad at remembering things, right? And I think reviewing your vision, right? So what is your purpose? What are your passions? What are your intentions? That's like as frequently as you should shower, right? It's you think you just do that exercise once and you've got this internal compass locked in. It's like, oh, I am so clear on my purpose. I'm so clear what I want each area of my life to look like in an intentional way. And I've got the passions that are driving me kind of as a fuel. There's no way I'm not going to be disciplined. And unless you review those things over and over and over, I would say daily, it's pretty easy to lose that impact and lose that power, right?
Hmm.
It's kind of like, taking a shower, and it's kind of like your wife. It's like on my wedding day, I told my wife that I love her, and I can't just say, I told you I love you on our wedding day. I'll let you know if that changes. I let her know every day that I still love her.
That's good. That's good. Well, so when it comes to that, it's kind of like, what would you say to people or to somebody who maybe thinks, I don't know, vision casting or, passions is a little like woo woo, or it's, I don't know, maybe it just seems like overwhelming, or it just seems so out there. Like, I don't know, I'm just trying to live my life.
Yep.
Like, what would you, I don't know, how would you encourage somebody to think
Yeah,
differently?
I'm with you, right? I grew up, my dad's an engineer, very practical person. As I've lived my life, the power of leadership is hard to understate. And a lot of that comes from how do you lead your own life and how do you
Hmm.
lead yourself? And if you're a business owner, you've learned this of your employees, sales reps, project managers, painters are not autonomous agents that just lead themselves to success. They need coaching, development, support, high direction, all those things. And you're no different, right? Um, it's kind of like I wish I didn't have to. And another example of this would be priority management, weekly priority management. And I remember I was big into priority management even in my kind of my early mid 20s. I would sit down every week on Sunday afternoon and I would go through the exercise of doing the brain dump, categorizing how many hours, prioritizing, fitting it into a block schedule. And I had a roommate who was like, that is such a waste of time. You could have actually been doing things on your list the last 2 hours instead of planning out the whole week. I'm like, man, I wish I didn't have to. I can speak for myself. I don't know if anybody else knows this. I find that I am very unintentional with my time unless I take the time to prioritize it and plan it out. That's maybe not everybody, but I would say my default state is that I am not very productive with my life unless I'm clearly leading myself intentionally.
Hmm. That makes me think of a great book, super popular the last handful of years, Atomic Habits, and he lays out different like a system for developing habits. One of the principles that he lays out is make it obvious, which I think he's a big proponent of creating a system to aid the behaviors that you want to see and making it obvious of kind of create a system. How would you say, and then too, applying this, this applies to all of life, but then even applying this to being a business owner, how has system creation to aid you in being disciplined, what does that look like? Is that something you think about? To what degree do you think about that? How do you set that up in your life?
Sure. I guess the less mental BTUs you have to use on decision making a day, each day the better. And the systems you talk about are nice because it's more habit forming and character forming, which oftentimes are the intentions that the goals are ultimately trying to achieve. Right? So you're not just trying to hit this mile marker, this milestone. That's merely keeping you guided in the right direction to become the type of person that does those things. And that's what habits are really good for. But yeah, when it comes to when I've worked with people and it gets down to, weekly accountability, are you on track or off track for the 30-day goals that we set that are aligned to your intentions and fueled by your passions? And if they're not being hit, the question is, do you actually believe in the intentions? Right? Is this something that's actually fueled by your passions? Or should we just put some simple accountability metrics in, right? And maybe it's something like, hey, I'm going to text you my workouts every morning because I'm just more likely to do it if I have accountability. Or we're going to do a midweek check-in and see, what the diet plan looks like. Or you can go all the way, like if somebody asks for it and they want it, you can do a hard accountability. Say, great, let's do a 3-way call with your wife at 9:00 every night. And you and I can just talk about if we're hitting our intentions. So that's never a forced upon thing. It's always a requested thing of, hey, just call out, when I do this exercise with people, it's more about aligning your actions to your intentions. And sometimes you're going to change your intentions. You don't actually want that. You just wrote it down. Sometimes I actually really want this and I would like, block and tackle accountability. And then
Hmm.
everybody performs better with a coach in whatever area of life you're looking at. It could be physical, mental, spiritual, marriage, how to be a better father, how to volunteer well, how to do your work well and business well. right? Whatever coaches you can get in your life, you're going to perform better in those life areas.
Yeah, that's good. So if somebody is feeling undisciplined in a certain area of their business, and like what would you recommend as like a baby step, or if they were kind of, they said, Jason, here's XYZ behavior that I know I should be doing, or I should be doing a better job of, or I should be more consistent, but I'm struggling. What do you got for me?
Yeah, it's in their business. It could be like they may not be the right person to do it. So this person may be saying, I am really a poor manager of people. And when it comes to holding people accountable and coaching them, I'm the worst. And my advice could be, I think you're a visionary and you need someone to be the integrator in your business. And let's look at a financial model where maybe you take that leap. So that's part of the reality of a business and being a business owner is, sometimes you don't have to fight the grain too much. Sometimes you can just go with the flow on it. But outside of that, casting a clear vision, having a clear why of where you want to get to. A lot of times in life and in business, there's this island, out there that we want to get to. It's a nice, beautiful resort. We're here on the shoreline, right? It's too far to swim, so it's not a direct path. So you got to build a raft today. And nobody likes just dilling around and making a raft. But to get content into that is important, because without that raft, there's no way you're going to get to the island. First, you got to build the raft. Then we got to teach you how to paddle. Then we got to make the sails. Then you're going to learn how to desalinate water. Right? There's this whole process. And a lot of times, if you just get stuck in, why on earth am I building this raft? This sucks. That's where anxiety starts to come in, right? And discontentment starts to creep in. So how do you get content with the step, the stage, the work that you're in right now? Become content with the work that you're in, knowing where it's going to lead to and what that future vision looks like.
Yeah, it's just a theme, which is good. And I didn't anticipate this as much going into this conversation, given the topic, but it really comes back to so much like, what is the vision? Like, what are you trying to get to? So maybe even, I know that you're super passionate about this. Do you want to maybe give a little introduction of like an option that you have used, the Life Arrow?
Sure.
Of like, this is a tool that you've used to get personally clear on what is my vision, what is my why.
So I work with people on this, and it's something I just do for free, and it's the highlight of my week, and it's something that gives me energy as I'm in this transitory state of retirement, as I figure out the next thing I can lay my hand to. But it's a worksheet that I started using when I was 22 years old, and I really got into it. I started doing silent retreats at that age as well. And so it all kind of meshed together. But the basic premise of the exercise is we start with, what is your purpose, right? And that's the big question that a lot of people come to. And it usually ends up being a workshop that we go through. What is your purpose? And then what are the areas of your life and what are their intentions? So typically I'll break this into 3 categories of yourself, your family, and the world. And then there's the concept of you can never pour from an empty cup. So one of the best ways you can serve your family is by taking care of yourself. One of the best ways you can serve the world is by taking care of your family. And a lot of times people will get that backwards. They think, hey, if I just sacrifice my family and hone in on my business, like I was talking about in the beginning part of this episode, that's going to be the best route in life. I think, hey, if I just neglect myself and just focus on serving my wife and kids, that's ideal. It's like, well, the best way you can serve your wife and kids is making sure that your cup is full, and then you can pour in and make sure your family's good, and they can pour into the world through vocation, volunteer, and social activities. But with all those categories, then start to play out, what are the intentions that you're going to eventually arrive to? So these are very openly descriptive. They're the opposite of a SMART goal. It's what you would write on your tombstone. Really define it as, when you set a goal, to what ends are you setting that goal? So you may set a goal of running a marathon. It's like, well, why? Like, to what ends is running a marathon achieve? And it's probably a more openly descriptive statement about fitness or stewarding your body well, or being capable to do as you feel you're called to do, something around those lines. Then the passion, this is going to be a monologue for a little bit. The passion, that is what drives your desire to hit those goals. And so you have your intentions, which is the compass. Where am I going? All of your intentions. hone into a purpose, but your passions are what fuel you and push you forward. Right. And then so in your personal life, it could be something as simple as realizing my human potential. Right. It could be founding a family legacy for your family, and for the world, who knows what it could be. Right. Leave the world better than you found it, or some statement like that. But something that actually gets you fired up. Good way to figure out your passions are what makes you emotional. So if you ever get mad, this is a good thing. People get mad. That's like, oh, that's a passion. Or if they get sad, like, oh, that's so what makes you weep? What makes you pound the table? Those are clear indicators of passions. Sometimes they're revenge that you get on an earlier part of your life. So people that grew up in a broken household oftentimes get really passionate about healthy families. If someone was an alcoholic, they get very passionate about helping free others from those bondages. Once you get that, that's really the foundation. And that is, you get that clear, you're going to avoid a midlife crisis. You don't do that work, you're not going to benefit from the compounding effects of having decades and decades and decades moving in a singular direction. And that's the really sad part of life, is if you don't do that hard work and get very clear on where you're going, you're going to end up, as you said, the winds are never favorable, right? Skewing around. But it's a pretty beautiful thing where if you can just do very simple accountability, very simple goal setting, but it's in the same direction for decades and decades and decades, it is amazing what you can achieve. We oftentimes will overestimate what we can do in a single year and vastly underestimate what we can do in a decade.
Sure.
That's kind of the foundation work. There's 2 other big modules that I'll work people through. It ends up being 6 sessions that we do together. But it's something that I've been passionate about. It's something I volunteer and do with people, and it gives me a lot of joy and a lot of life.
Yeah, that's great, man.
And it's something that I practice in my own life too. So I've done this for the last 13 years now, as I just turned 37. And so for the last 13 years, every quarter, I've gone through this exercise and then a complete rewrite every single year. I started doing it on 2x3 sheets of paper, 2 feet by 3 feet. And now I've moved to a digital G sheet, and I practice this exercise myself.
So you've been doing it for 13 years. If you look at what your life is today, is it exactly what you mapped out 10 years ago?
It's like the 10-year goals, probably 30% get hit as written, 20 to 30% hit as written.
And I think that's something that is important, or to me at times when I've done exercises like this, I feel like whatever I write down, it has to be written in stone. So when I think of like coming to a purpose,
there are some
at times,
things that have been written in stone and haven't changed. My purpose and my intentions have not changed. So the goals are not whips, they're just targets, and they're mile markers to make sure that I'm progressing in this direction that I've laid out as an intention. Right. And if your intentions are wonky and changing, that's the midlife crisis stuff. That's where you don't get to benefit from those compounding effects of decades and decades. Right. But you may say, hey, I want to bench 400 pounds or 300 pounds or whatever is impressive these days. You may set that out as a goal for an intention that would say, I want to be physically able to do as I'm called, and I'll control my flesh, recognizing the Holy Spirit fills my earthly body. Right. And then you get into it and you get a shoulder injury and you end up doing more endurance events. So you're going to write a very different goal. It's probably going to be more around a marathon or a 5K time or something. But that goal is just moving you in that direction to the intention, which you never get to fully achieve. Right? It's not like you can cross that off. Right? So if you have an intention around your wife that says, I want my wife to feel the love of God with how I treat her and honor her, you don't get to check that off and say you're done. Right?
Sure.
You can't say, oh, I arrived, I'm done. But you're setting goals that move you in that direction, knowing that it's, well, as I've always told you, Haakon, we are human beings, not human achievings. Right? So what kind of person are you becoming through your actions? It's not about the achievements. It's not about those goals. It's not about the milestones. Those are simply guideposts and wayposts to that intention. So that was another rant, but if you can get the purpose and the intentions written in stone, that's a beautiful thing. The goals, the farther out, you're probably hitting 90% accountability on a quarter, right? On the year, it's probably 50 to 75% as originally written. Sure. Right? You go a decade out, 20 to 30% as originally written actually get hit.
How do people arrive at their purposes and intentions. So, I mean, if those are such an anchor, that seems like a super important thing. How do you walk people through making sure they're clear on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a workshop, so it takes time. I'll just tell you, it takes time. It takes hours. It takes work. You're probably, when I say writing in stone, you're probably taking a good year, 2 or 3 to really continue to wordsmith that to something you feel solid in and refined. And that's the beautiful thing about, I think, this document, or this process that I like to use, is it's a reverberating effect,
Yeah.
where if you're not actually clear in your purpose and intentions, there's going to be some wonkiness in the goals that you set. And it's going to all be pretty apparent. It's going to get pretty obvious that there's something that could just use some more wordsmithing on it. But the purpose, it's the singular focus. Start with a single word, right? It's a common exercise. Put that into a couple words. It's the common language, party level conversation of, here's what all of my intentions really hone into. And so a lot of times when I work with people, we'll start with the purpose, we'll write something down, then we'll work on the intentions, then we'll work on setting goals. As we're setting goals, we end up rewriting the intentions, and then we rewrite the intentions, we end up rewriting the purpose. And it's a lot of reverberation that happens throughout the entire document.
Sure. That's great. Great that you do that. Yeah, observing you do that and talk about it has definitely been helpful for me. So if anybody, I mean, I know this is something you offer all the time. If folks are interested,
it's your classic, what's it called, professor's hour offer, where I've gone to speaking events, and I'll put a QR code with the document. I'll say, just reach out to me, and I'd love to talk you through it. I'm super passionate about it. I'm 90% retired, and this is something that gets me fired up. Very few people actually reach out to me, right? And then the ones that do, even fewer of them will end up doing the prep work to have a successful meeting. And then even fewer will schedule a second meeting. But the dozen or so that I end up doing it with, it's super, meaningful and fulfilling for me. So yeah, reach out to me. I'd love to work with people on helping get their life aligned. And there's no judgment on what it is. I've found that, the things that would kind of irk me if people were super into, most people aren't willing to write that and put it on paper, right? And so someone, you kind of worry like, hey, I'd love to, beat up my wife and cheat on her, and I hope my kids never want a relationship with me. They may do that through their actions, right? But they're not willing to write that out and say, this is what I want in life. And that's where a lot of this, the rubber meets the road, the reverberation of the document. It's a simple tool, but I think the principles of working on your foundation are timeless. That's
great, man. You mentioned semi-retirement. So seasons change, seasons of life change.
Yeah.
Not to put you on the spot too much, but I'd be curious, just what does discipline look like in your life today? Like what are some areas where you feel like you're happy with the discipline you have? And then if you don't mind sharing kind of you're a human being as well. So you're not perfect. Is there areas of discipline that you're trying to grow in, you're working on? Like, how are you tackling that? Kind of what's going good and what are you working on in the discipline category?
So big picture, I think I'm a really talented and value additive startup guy. And so getting Paris painting up and off the ground, I think I was uniquely qualified for that. And I've benefited from bringing a team of people and relying on their specialized skill sets. Similar with Aleph Holdings, both in the apartment category and in our partnership program. I think getting those things off the ground and up and running, really, really good at. Now we're able to professionalize and bring in specialists. And I don't think I'm as needed or quite as valuable anymore. And so there's a little bit of acceptance of that when you're a founder of something, that's kind of the win. The best case scenario is you're able to step back as an equity holder, and you're not beholden to being involved day to day, and it will not only survive, but thrive even more. I would say I'm still pretty intentional with most of the hours in my day, right? So I'm not getting up and working on a vocation where I have to earn an income, but I still wake up and I'm pretty focused, on my physical wellness, my mental wellness, my spiritual wellness, the time I spend with my wife, the time I spend with my kids, the time I spend volunteering, the time I spend in my social life. That's been an area of focus that I deleted when I first made this area. There's 2 areas I deleted. One was volunteer and the other was social. I'm like, those are both stupid. I don't have time for that. And I would say in the last handful of years, volunteering has become a big part of my life. And over the last 2 quarters, I've found myself being very intentional with being social. And I'm reaching out to people and I'm writing them letters and I'm scheduling lunches and I'm inviting them to do workouts with me. And it's that intentionality. Just because you're retired doesn't mean that you are unintentional. And I think that's the disconnect of, if I'm not working 8 hours a day, am I just carefree with those 8 hours, or am I intentional with those hours? And some of that time, I would just say unabashedly, I've enjoyed playing video games in this season of life. And I was talking to a friend, there's a game called Zelda and Tears of the Kingdom. And I got deep into that game and I was playing it a lot and really enjoying it. And a lot of the time I was with my kids. And they asked if I'd ever played Breath of the Wild, which was a previous version of that game. And that had come out 6 years prior. And I just know 6 years prior, I did not have time for leisure or fun. I was all in on focus, determination, sacrifice, as we talked about. So I feel like I've even been fairly intentional with my leisure time. Now, nobody's perfect. I would say there's vocational work that I've been really passionate about in the past. There's vocational work I'll be really passionate about in the future. And I'm kind of laying in that hammock a little bit right now, right? And I'd say that's a temporary seasonal life. I'm enjoying it, but I also know that it's kind of like taking a Sabbath once a week. It's really good for you. But if you Sabbath like 28 days in a row, it starts to turn into sloth and depression and sadness. So there are these rhythms of recovery, of re-engaging in areas of your life like volunteering and social, recalibrating some balance. But that's been for me just being intentional with my time, but also being aware of the season that I'm in.
That's great. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing, man. Well, hey, I think that's a good place for us to wrap this up. Again, thank you for taking the time. If folks want to get in touch with you, want to reach out, want to hear more about the life planning arrow, or pick your brain on other things, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah. Find me on social media, Jason Paris. I'm a guy holding a paintbrush. I'm a millennial, so that's going to be by far the easiest way to reach out to me. You can also email me, jasonparis.m as in Michael @gmail.com. Don't call me. I told you, I'm a millennial. I will not answer the phone. You can text me and we can start that way. But social media is the best. Email is an option too. If you find my phone number somehow, do not call me. Send me a text.
Nice. Awesome, man. If anybody wants to get in touch with Aleph, reach out to us. We can have a website. You can easily set up a call if you'd like to learn anything more about what we have going on with partnerships. You can also check us out on the socials as well, Instagram, Facebook, etc. So again, Mr. Jason Paris, thank you for the time. Thank you for sharing, and take care, everybody.